Does the thought of your biological clock ticking away make you wonder if waiting for physical intimacy until marriage is keeping you from something? Are you worried about getting older, not being able to have children, or becoming less attractive so men won't be interested in you? Maybe you've started believing that quiet voice whispering in your ear, if you keep waiting, you'll lose your chance and your dream of having a family someday. But what if the greatest gift God is giving you during this season isn't simply the act of waiting itself, but the opportunity to build a relationship with a man that is so rooted in friendship, trust, faith, and lasting love? Let's discover why the fear of running out of time or of missing out on something should never be the force behind the decisions we make, and discover the hope that comes from trusting God's timing. Physical intimacy is one beautiful part of a thriving marriage, but it's not the foundation. Before marriage comes the opportunity to build something even deeper. That is a relationship grounded in love, trust, friendship, and faith. When fear rushes us toward only one part of a relationship, we can miss the beautiful foundation God wants us to build first. Is waiting for physical intimacy until marriage taking too long? Are you tired of repeating the same relationship mistakes? Do you want to build a relationship God's way? If that's you, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Maria, married to a godly man I never thought I deserved, and I learned how to experience true intimacy without compromising my values. If you're ready to grow closer to Jesus, heal from your past, and make wise relationship choices, let's discover your godly love story. If you're struggling with waiting for physical intimacy when you know it's God's plan, head over to my website, firstkissstory.com. That's one word, First Kiss Story, and explore the collection of real life stories from women who once worried that their biological clock was ticking, but who have found hope while waiting on God. Sometimes hearing someone else's journey reminds us that we're not alone. Firstkissstory.com is filled with stories from women I've personally interviewed about reclaiming the meaning of physical intimacy within marriage. It's not about whether or not you've kissed before. Think of that very first kiss on the wedding altar. It's the first intimate moment shared within the safety of a marriage covenant. It represents unity, devotion, and God's redemptive design. That's what the Waiting Until Marriage podcast is all about. I know a dog named Fred. He is one of the sweetest yellow labs that you'll ever meet. He's got a zest for life, and his humans just happen to be pilots. One of their airplanes is a Beechcraft Bonanza. It's a single engine, low wing airplane, and they have a very active lifestyle, and they take Fred with them wherever they go. They visit pet friendly hotels, they go to friends and relatives who welcome Fred into their homes, and he has an excitement to fly. So, what they do when they fly with him is they take out two of the six seats so Fred is comfortable in the back by himself, but it's very noisy. So Fred has his very own headphones. So they get him all prepped with his headphones. He loads into the airplane and he enjoys the ride. And guess what? He's not missing any part of the experience. He's still enjoying the flight with the people he loves and he's being a part of the adventure. The headphones don't take away the joy or the overall experience, but actually they're just protecting him from something harmful. All that noise going on around him that could potentially hurt him. After all, he's a dog and they have really sensitive ears. Doesn't sometimes obedience to God feel the same way? It seems like we may be missing out because we're saying no to physical intimacy before marriage. But is something really being taken away from us? What if God instead is protecting us so that we can enjoy the journey the way He intended? In Fred's story, the headphones didn't stop him from enjoying the flight, they just blocked out the noise. What are our loudest noises? Maybe it's fear of getting older. You're wondering if you're still able to have children. You may want to be a wife and a mother more than anything, and then that fear creeps in. What if I'll be alone for the rest of my life, or I'll have to settle for someone that I don't love just to have a family? Or you may compare yourself to friends who seem to have everything that you've prayed for. Everyone's getting married before you, or you romanticize about the perfect premarital life that you see two people have on the movie. Guess what? Hollywood is not real. You're thinking, my biological clock is ticking. I want the life that she has in that movie. I want my life to be as wonderful as hers is. You might have fear that someone won't find you attractive or desirable anymore. My body's changing. Will anyone even still choose me? Well, I had those fears too. I remember I was so insecure about my knees and my nose. I'm Italian. My dad's 100% Italian. So I've got an Italian schnoz. And to me, it's pretty big. I don't really like my profile. Another thing is, I think I have bony knees. Well, I never said that to my husband when I met him before we were married. But I remember once, actually twice, he mentioned once about my nose and about my knees. And he made compliments about them. And I thought that was the goofiest thing. But you know what? That was just him saying that he was okay with what I thought that was wrong with me. Don't we tend to be so critical of ourselves and we have this fear that other people are seeing all of our faults that we think we have? Sure, all those fears are real, but you know what? They're also just loud noises, also. Isn't that just like fear to shout into your ear? Hurry, time is running out. Compromise. It's not ideal, but I'm going to do it because everybody else is doing it. Don't wait. There's no reason to wait. We love each other and we're in a committed relationship. This may be my only chance. He's the only Prince Charming left in the entire world. There is no victory in being led that way, being led by fear. Instead, let God do the leading. He doesn't lead through panic, He leads through peace. 2 Timothy 1:7 reminds us that God did not give me the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. The longing that you're feeling is good. God created those desires, but they were never meant to be louder than your trust in God and His timing. I experienced those same frustrations when my husband, before he was my husband, and I were alone, and we were engaged, and um, we would go out on a date, and then I'd go back to his place, and we would cuddle on the couch, but that's it. But I always hated the fact that I had to go home. I'm thinking, can't I just stay? We're not going to do anything. But you know what? The Bible also says to put away appearances of evil. So we're not even going to go there. Those were our boundaries. And it reminds me of one of the women that I interviewed for the First Kiss Story website that I have. And she and her boyfriend at the time, I think this was even before that they were engaged, their whole stance was because they loved each other and they loved themselves, they wanted to respect their bodies and keep each other pure. It wasn't about rules. They made a decision. They chose to honor God. And so they chose to honor each other as well. They realized they needed the Lord in order to walk their relationship out in purity because they couldn't do it in their own strength. That was the turning point. I remember she said after that, whenever they were on a date and they went to each other's house and nothing would happen, they celebrated every time. So they would go home at night, they would call each other on the phone to say goodnight, and then they talk about how happy they were because they didn't do anything to break the rules that they had set for each other. It felt so good. It was a decision that they made. They were able to celebrate the victory of doing things God's way and not compromising the values that they put in place for themselves. When we're focused only on physical intimacy and performing for our boyfriend or our fiance, all those other things that God wants to build before the wedding day, they just get pushed aside. What about friendship and serving each other? Your fiance, your boyfriend is someone that you can really lay down your life for rather than something like sex that you take from the other person. Or what about building trust? With that comes commitment to each other and to your relationship. You want to be able to trust that what he says he's going to do, what you say you're going to do. And that has to do with seeing the positive fruits in another person's life. You want that in your future spouse. What about communication? You want to learn to resolve disagreements and you want to be able to perfect that before marriage. Sometimes sex, if it's done too early in a relationship, it interferes with what's actually going on in a person's heart. It kind of muddies the waters. You want to see the person's real self without that interference. And then your shared faith. You want to believe the same things. You want to be on the same page spiritually. These are things that you want to concentrate on building first. You want to discover each other's hearts. You want to help that person discover God's purpose and calling for your lives together, for your individual purposes. You want to help each other walk that out. Those are so key to a successful marriage way before the sex ever happens. And all these things take time to build successfully before the marriage. And then the biological clock doesn't even become a concern. James 1, 2 through 4, it says, "Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let that endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Remember, physical intimacy is not the whole relationship. It's the celebration of a relationship that's already been built. And it's kind of like the pretty bow that you put outside of the package. The goal is not ignoring your biological clock, but it's refusing to let that become your guide in life. Our biological clock may remind us that a passage of time has gone by, but following God's timing instead is the wiser way to go. In this episode, we're talking about hope that's found in waiting on God. And that hope isn't found in racing against the clock, it's found in trusting in the one who holds time in his hands. Well, we've come to another end, but there's so much more I want to share with you. Visit firstkissstory.com, where you'll read stories of women that I've interviewed who found hope while waiting on God, while they once thought that their biological clock was ticking. Share with me through the contact section of the website which story impacted you the most and what topics you would like to hear on this podcast. Hey friend, I'm really glad you were here today. If this episode spoke to you, would you take 30 seconds to share it with someone who's trying to do relationships God's way too? If you have a moment, leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you haven't already, follow the Waiting Until Marriage podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. It means so much to me knowing that this is helping you walk in healing and faith. All right, I'll meet you back here next week for another episode. Let this be one step closer to the love story God has written for you.